All right, so I think we can get started now. So, hi everyone, my name is Zain Hasnain. I'm going to be heading this beginner's guide to hackathons. So essentially from this workshop, you're going to learn how to basically just navigate a hackathon if you have no idea what's going on. You'll be able to learn how to go from an idea to a prototype, and essentially just how to get the most out of the hackathon experience. So a little bit about myself. So I'm one of the directors of ETX. I have a co-director, Patrick Riley. Yes, you here for beginner's guide? Are you here for the beginner's guide? The beginner's guide for hackathons? It's 1060. Yep. All right, just some interesting people. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm the director, along with Patrick Riley. He's the other director. I'm one of the MLH Top 50 of 2021. And yeah, been attending a lot of hackathons. In terms of hackathons, I've like mentored at, done workshops at, I've done around like 40 events so far. But yeah, done a lot of that. I do a lot of work in MLAI and most recently learning a bit more about quantum computing. But yeah, got a lot of knowledge about hackathons. Yep, so basically the timeline for this workshop is going to be getting the most out of the hackathon experience, forming a team, brainstorming, working remotely, because I know at least half of you are doing that. Then I'm going to talk about presenting and judging. All right. So in terms of getting the most out of the hackathon experience, the number one thing I can encourage is go to everything, even if it's something that you absolutely know nothing about. I encourage you to at least go because one, you'll never know what or who you'll find there. You might find that you connect really well with the speaker or just other hackers there. There's a lot more you can get out of a workshop than just the content. But that as well, like even if you've never experienced something, you should at least give it a try just to see if you may actually enjoy it. And talk to people, just even if they're not on your team, just if you're in person, just talk to them just out in the atrium or where everybody's hacking, like in room 2150. But yeah, if you're virtual, just in any of the channels, really just hit someone up and start talking with them. And probably another really important aspect is enjoying your hack. So winning, of course, is really great, but for me, honestly, the number one thing is to make something fun and that you're passionate about. It's an opportunity for you to get it really creative. I often schedule myself to do projects and then not end up doing them, but hackathon is a really great opportunity to just kind of have the support you need to go further and actually make something. And along with that, you should definitely try to push yourself and extend yourself, like learn something new, even if you're used to one type of tech. Learning something really new is a really great opportunity at a hackathon just because you learn all those granular details that you might not get out of like a guide or something like that. And one other thing regarding like talking to people, probably the number one thing you'll get out of hackathons, like even more than prizes, more than anything else, are connections. That's the number one thing for me, because in an ideal scenario, even if you win every prize at a hackathon, of course you'll get the prizes, but if you make a great connection at a hackathon, that can lead to a job offer, that can lead to a recommendation, that can lead to a job offer, it can lead to all sorts of things. So connections for me are probably the number one thing. Are you here for that beginner? Yep, I'm here. Yeah, so for me, that's probably the number one thing. I actually have one anecdote of the person I met at my very first hackathon, which was at Hackathon. It was a hackathon at George Washington University. We actually ended up winning Best Project in ML there. But my teammate Terry, who I met there, we still talk to this day, and it's been like years, like many years. He works at Deloitte now, I believe as a cloud engineer. He's done some AI stuff as well. But yeah, I've given him some advice. He's given me a recommendation or two. So those kind of interactions, like they keep. So definitely connections are the number one thing. All right. And then finding team members. So everyone's had an opportunity to kind of get to know each other in the atrium, but especially for virtual, go to the team formation channel and just give a little blurb about yourself, what you do, what you want to learn, stuff like that. And just try to meet as many people as you can. Yeah, and one thing I want to stress is that even if you're a beginner, even if you've never programmed before, you can provide great value to your teams. And I'm not just saying that just out of like kindness or whatever. I genuinely mean that, just because some of the best projects I've seen have been from first-time hackers. Because no matter what kind of tech stack you're using, of course that's really important in and of itself. But if the solution you create isn't actually solving the problem and it's just using fancy AI, to me as a judge, that's definitely something that matters a lot. So especially if you have like a connection to a problem, or if you have like specialized knowledge in a certain field, that's definitely important. So even if you're a beginner to hacking, you probably have value in a lot of other ways. Like, say you're not allowed to know about sciences, a specific thing in general, and stuff like that. Or if you're very good in terms of project management, those are all really good skills. And actually 40% of hackers this weekend are attending their first hackathon ever. So you're definitely not alone. And actually, one kind of anecdote I wanted to give about this as well, just to push my point. So one hackathon that I was mentoring like a year ago, it was a team of all first-time hackers. They had never touched code at all before. But what they ended up creating was a Chrome extension. And actually, we have a Chrome extension workshop coming up in a little bit. They created a Chrome extension that was essentially a note-taking app. So basically, all it did was it allowed you to highlight text, and then it would automatically save it using the Chrome extension into a Google Doc of your choice under a header. So basically, if you copied like a bunch of text about a historical event, it would save it to a header talking about that historical event as an example. But yeah, it was a really simple thing. Not super like technically impressive, but it actually ended up winning, mainly because a lot of the judges really resonated with its use case, because a lot of hacks just, they don't have the use case of like something you could actually see yourself using. But this, especially with people who program in their career, like they have so many tabs open that being able to instantly save something you're copying into your Google Doc and having that text linked to where you copied it from, that's definitely something useful. So even though it's simple, it definitely was useful and actually tackled the problem that they're trying to solve effectively. All right, so a little bit about finding team members. So that part is outdated, but yeah, you should be able to just go into the team formation channel, talk to people there. Even if you're at a UX event, just after the event or before the event, you can just talk to the other people in the room, just ask like who they are, just things like that. If you're looking for a team still, you should definitely include some key details like your skill set, the experience you have, if you have any existing project ideas or any particular tracks you want to go for. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And if you have the opportunity, I'd encourage you to ask friends to hack with you, just because that can definitely take the pressure off of finding new people. But also working with people from all around the world is a really great opportunity itself. And some of the things to look for, one thing that I find really interesting is just diverse backgrounds, because you won't get the opportunity often to collaborate with as many people from as many different backgrounds as in a hackathon. And we have almost 600 people here, both virtually and physically, I believe. So that's a lot of people from a lot of parts of the world. So I definitely encourage you to team with people across majors, across demographics. It definitely provides a lot of rich experiences. And additionally with that, in terms of skills and experience, I would definitely encourage you to find a well-balanced team. So for example, if you want to make an app, try not to find 4 people with only back-end experience. Or if there are 4 people with back-end experience, make sure some of them are learning about front-end. So just make sure that that you have some variety in your skills. And we're going to take a look at the tracks now. So this is one of your best friends, one of your many best friends, as we talked about in the opening ceremony. So this is the dev post page. So this basically has all the rules for your hack in terms of submission. There's also going to be a how to submit your hack on dev post workshop tomorrow at Saturday when that's due. So you can also go to that. There's also a helpful submission FAQ just so you can know like what's allowed, what isn't. And there are prizes. So it's currently being updated right now just because the opening ceremony only recently ended. But in a little bit, we'll have these fully updated with all the prizes and all the categories that you can apply to. All right. And one other thing I wanted to talk about, one other thing I wanted to bring up is something I see a lot of teams just not doing at all, and I think it's very much a missed opportunity. So after you found your team, like the first thing you should do with them is talk. Like I'm not kidding. The amount of teams that I've seen just go straight into working is far too many, and it's just I honestly just don't understand it because you're working with these people for 36 hours. So I'd figure you at least want to get to know them a bit better, but that's just me, I guess. But this is definitely an important thing that I think a lot of people need to take some more time and actually do. And just asking like questions like telling each other about yourselves, like how'd you get into programming, like hobbies, just general things like that, or even like if they have any existing ideas for a project is really important. And I'm going to go into it a little bit later, but asking these questions has value to your project as well as just like getting to know them as people just socially. All right. So in terms of brainstorming, you should essentially start with the problem that you want to solve, and you should make sure to do at least some research onto why it's an issue, other approaches that have been done, why those aren't working as well or what they could do better, and things like that when you're looking at your problem. So definitely try to be creative in your when brainstorming. So either creating a hack that's tackling a problem that's not as well known, or you creating a novel solution to a very common problem. And you should also probably base it on your skills. So like the previous example, if you have 4 backend people, maybe not focus on something super front end heavy, for example. And also just what the people on your team want to be learning. And then research is another really underrated part of hackathons that I think is very important, especially as someone who has judged like dozens of hackathons. Like the best projects I see are the ones that they don't have to do like tons and tons of research, but they have to do a minimum amount of research to see like what doesn't work, like seeing what existing approaches there are, and then showing how they're different from that, I think goes a very long way. All right, and before I go further, where I'm going to be talking about working remotely and also working in general, does anyone have any questions? Because I know that was a decent bit of information, but yeah, if you do, you can just come out loud if you're in the room, or just in the chat, I'll also be accepting questions. All right, does anyone here have questions? All right. Right. If no one has questions right now, there's also going to be time for questions at the end, so you can keep them there. But the next part I'm going to be going over is working remotely and in person. So teamwork is another really important part of actually succeeding in a hackathon. Even if you have a team that's like super experienced in all these different kinds of tech, they can definitely struggle on a hackathon environment if everyone's skills that they have aren't really being used to the fullest. So the number one thing in terms of working with your team, and especially remotely, is just communication. Just creating an open environment where people can share ideas and especially like provide criticisms, and seeing like how you're going to move forward to the next step after you've completed one. This is related to what I was talking about before when I was really advising you to talk to your teammates as people. It's really important just so you can create that air of honesty so that you're not just afraid to bring something up that kind of clashes with someone else's idea. I think it's really important just to do that. Another really good thing you can do are use something to keep track of your progress. So for example, milestones. I remember for most of my virtual hackathons, I've had just a Google Doc of prize categories that I was looking into applying for, any project ideas I had. And also like if we had a project idea we were more set on, I'm thinking of like, okay, what do we need to do first? What should we have done by today? Stuff like that. I think it's very important just so everyone is on the same page regarding what's the priority and can you actually get this done within 36 hours? I think this can really prevent some scenarios that I've seen, which is like it's 3 a.m. on Sunday and you've been trying to get something to work, but you didn't really want to bring it up to your team just because you didn't want to let them down or anything. But it's come to the point where it's not going to work out, so you have to switch gears at like 3 in the morning. It's not a fun time. So I definitely encourage you to be communicative just to prevent that, to make sure you're all having a great time. Another thing is just constant revision and reviewing. So with my teams, especially virtually, I believe we met because you can't just tap someone on the shoulder like in person every hour or 2 hour. Just it doesn't matter, just as long as it's consistent. Just seeing like how's the progress on this task going. Is anything not working? Does something need more of a priority or does it need more eyes on it? Things like that are definitely important. All right, so now we're going to be going into a bit of a flowchart example of basically how you can go from an idea to a prototype. So yeah, this is just a rough example. So of course, there's more details, the more complicated it gets, but this is just a rough outline of it. So if you decided that you want to make a website for something, so for a particular problem that you want to solve, probably the first question you should ask about your website is, do you want it to be static or do you want it to be dynamic? So a static website is non-interactive. It's good for just displaying info without needing to be constantly like updated. Doesn't need a database really. But dynamic sites are interactive. They store user information in like blogs, e-commerce, things like that. They definitely require more tech to be used, for example, like SQL or MongoDB as your database, stuff like that, PHP. So dynamic is definitely more intensive, but it also has different advantages. And it really just depends on what you need that website for. For example, if your website is like the main part of your hack, then I'd encourage you to try and do a dynamic site. But if doing website is more of a corollary part of your hack, or for example, if you're doing an ML AI hack and the website is more just a simple visual, then it should be fine to go static because you're spending that time that you would have spent making it dynamic into the core part, which is the algorithm and the actual AI component. And then another thing to think about is your focus regarding what you want your website to achieve. So there's a lot more than this, obviously, but the examples I have here, visuals, interactivity, and simplicity. So visuals, just like making sure it's nice to the eye, just in general. Interactivity, just storing information like in a login page, storing posts if you're making a type of social media hack, something like that. And simplicity, so it's making sure everything is very easy to interact with and know where things are is very important. You should try and focus on the ones that are most important to your hack. So for example, if you're creating a hack that's targeted towards the elderly community, you're going to want to focus on something that's more simple and is more obvious to the eye in terms of like where you should navigate in terms of information, compared to something like an e-commerce site where you need to interact with the page and maybe fill a shopping cart with your chosen products and things like that. So yeah, you should definitely weigh out where you need to spend more of your time. All right, and then just going into a bit about like a bit of an example regarding milestones. So for example, if you're making your site, you can focus on first just the layout, just the outline, because you can fill it with content later. Designing like color scheme, your assets, formatting it for mobile. So you can either create a mobile app or you can use other technology to basically format your website into a web app. And then also, like I said, constantly checking in with your team. So if changes need to be made and re-strategizing your goals. So you can consider other resources and approaches. So one thing that's really good is hacker resources. So in live.vtx.com, which again is linked in the it is linked in the important links section of the Discord. If you go to the resources tab, there's some resources there. We'll be filling it out more as the hackathon goes, but one important resource that's there is the hackathon starter kits. So for example, if you're using something like what they have here is Python or Flask for Python, Node.js, and CockroachDB. So if you were to click on these, yeah, they basically go to a GitHub repo with information on how to get started, an installation guide, and all that sort of information, and then extensions and micro frameworks that are very helpful for utilizing it. So that's definitely a good place to start if you haven't used any of those before. So I definitely recommend them. And also just like I said before, with prioritizing where you should be spending your time, something that's really important is like, let's say you're trying to use MongoDB for your database, right? Even though that's more complicated, if it's not working out, you may want to switch to something maybe simpler like Firebase. Firebase is a lot more intuitive and easier to implement. So you should basically just weigh out where you need to spend more of your time, what advantage each option has, and definitely go from there. But the key is actually talking about it. That's the number one thing. All right. So the final piece is presenting and judging. So in terms of presenting and judging, you're going to be submitting a video along with your dev post page. That video should be 2 to 3 minutes long, and we have a strict time limit on that, so make sure you don't go over that. From my experience, the best project videos should mostly be a live demo with some background info. It should mostly be showing off the functionality of your hack, and you should definitely take a bit before that to explain yourself, either your research or the problem itself, because if a judge isn't resonating with your problem, they might be confused on like how your hack works or why it's doing what it's doing. So definitely explaining that briefly is important. Maybe you can show a statistic or two on like why your problem matters. And definitely, like I said before, you can compare it to other solutions and why your solution is different or what it's trying to achieve that's different. That definitely ticks that creativity box for them. And yeah, we have some judging criteria. So if you go on the dev post, and I'll link to some of these things after this workshop, just in the Discord, so you guys can have access to that. But yeah, some of our criteria are technical complexity. So how challenging or impressive was your project? And also, was it something that you'd used before, or was it something that you've used for the first time? Like, did you push yourself? Another thing is polish. So basically how complete your project is, regardless of the scope, just how complete it is as a program. Originality, so creativity, how novel your solution is, or the problem you're trying to solve is, or even just like what your hack is in general. Like I remember VT Hacks 6 or something like that. I remember looking at the People's Choice winner. It was that project was essentially a Doom Furby. So there's this whole craze where people were programming Doom on different things, and they programmed Doom on a Furby, which a Furby is a creepy ass children's toy. So that was definitely the most interesting hack I had seen there. And it won People's Choice. So that definitely matters. And usefulness. So how likely it is that your project would warrant further development, and how does it actually solve the problem? Like, is it actually something, if implemented, would actually be good? And this is something that I see some people not focusing on as much. But I think it's really important, just the usefulness and actual practicality of your hack. So for example, one thing I often say to people is fit the tech to the issue, not the issue to the tech. So what I mean by that is you should be focusing on your issue first and foremost, and the tech should mainly just be a tool to solve that issue. Whereas if you go out the opposite way, like, oh, I want to use ML or this other thing, you can do that to some extent, but if you solely focus on that part, you kind of lose sight of the original problem, and you kind of end up with a solution that isn't necessarily solving the solution as good as maybe, say, if you created this giant neural network, maybe you could have solved the same thing with simple data analytics or data science work. So that's definitely one point there. And actually, one thing I want to bring up in terms of actual like practicality and if your hack was implemented, would it actually work properly, is one hackathon I mentored in the past. I was mentoring this group of people who were basically brainstorming their project, and essentially their idea was to reduce discrimination in schools by using AI to redistrict. So basically, schools are districted kind of weirdly. So they'll look different in terms of that. Yeah, I immediately just thought of all the problems that could potentially cause, because one, like, how does redistricting schools essentially tackle discrimination? Because, for example, why aren't, you should definitely ask yourself, like, even the simplest questions are often the best. Like, why aren't all school zones just like squares? Like, wouldn't that just like be a lot better? So asking questions like that is definitely important. And also, it's definitely important because, like, outside of potentially being biased based on like race or gender, or like the lack of data that they have to actually do that kind of thing, if students were actually moved, like, how would that affect their commutes? Does someone's 10-minute commute turn into an hour? They suddenly have to move away from their friends just because of sort of arbitrary decision if they're like one neighborhood over? Like, how does that work exactly? And basically, even if those students were moved to a new school, would they actually be accepted there? So like, if that school was in a predominantly like white neighborhood or something like that, and a bunch of people of color move into that school, would they actually be accepted, or would they be discriminated against? So those are definitely some issues which, granted, are very complicated to solve, and I don't expect to have a perfect solution to that, because again, they're very complex. But I think that everyone should, especially if they're tackling those kinds of social issue kind of problems, just take some time to do a bit of research, find out approaches, why your problem is a problem in the first place. And also, especially if you're focusing on things impacting certain marginalized groups, I'd encourage you, or really just impacting any group, is just hear from the groups themselves how they're being impacted and what's happening. That's the number one thing I can say in terms of like how to get the best idea of that. All right, and one last thing I'm going to go over in judging. So in terms of a timeline, as we stated in the opening ceremony, submissions are due. There's 2 submission deadlines. There's one at 9 p.m. on Saturday. So that's basically just your initial submission. So that can be completely empty. All it has to have is your team members' names and all that, just making sure that your team has a submission on DevPost on Saturday, 9 p.m. So that's just one thing. And again, we're having a workshop at the same time, so you can have any questions answered. And then the other deadline for your hack in general is Sunday at 8 a.m. So just letting you know, that is a very strict time limit or time constraint. So I know how hard it can be to wake up early, but at least make sure that you have it done by then, because there won't be extensions for that. And again, make sure your project follows all the rules, like the video that you submit is 2 to 3 minutes long, that you include a link to your GitHub repo, and that all the code that you've created has only been created within the time of this hackathon. And then just going over some of the prizes in a bit, some of them are continuing to be added, but a few outside of just the first, second place. Well, actually, just go over those. So first place is going to be receiving an iPad for each member of the team. Second place, it will be receiving Nintendo Switch Lites. Third place will be receiving Gen 2 AirPods. We have a best UX UI hack, which will be receiving a Wacom graphic drawing tablet. We have a People's Choice Award. So on Sunday, basically after you've submitted your hack, it's going to be time for basically a science fair type setup where everyone can just walk around the room and look at each other's hack, where you're going to be voting on DevPost for the best hack. The one with the most votes wins People's Choice, and you win a beanbag chair. We have a most unique hack, which wins an Echo Show 2 for every member of the team. Glass hack, basically the most polished, wins an Arduino starter kit for each member of the team. Best demo video wins a PlayStation Classic console for each member. That's very exciting. Best beginner hack. So if your team has at least half, if at least half of your team are first-time hackers, they're eligible for the best beginner hack, and the price for that is a Sphero Mini for each member. We have a few more to be announced, but for the ones on here, there's mainly the Mantech hack, best hack that's designed for security and privacy. If you need more details, you can just ask them in their channel. They're happy to talk to you about that. But they'll be receiving an Oculus Quest 2 headset for each member. Capital One best financial hack. They'll be giving out $250 Amazon gift cards for each member of the team. And then Periton's best AI ML hack. They'll be giving out $400 Amazon gift cards to be split amongst the team. All right. So I just wanted to go over those prizes. And yeah, I talked about this a bit before, but generally, every judge is going to be different because every judge comes from a different background, of course. But as me, someone who's judged dozens of hackathons, most important things to me are creativity. If you have a solution or a connection to your problem, like it's something that you've personally faced or someone in your community has faced, that definitely piques my interest as a judge. Practicality, so if this solution were actually implemented, would it actually tackle the issue effectively? And also just making your challenges known. So like even if something didn't work out, so like say you try to implement some feature of your app, but you couldn't implement it in time or something like that, showing proof of your efforts definitely goes a long way, either specifying the reason you couldn't finish it or showing the code that you had mocked up to complete it, or just talking about it. That definitely goes a long way, even if you weren't able to complete it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the Beginner's Guide to Hackathons. As always, you can find me on the Hackathon Discord, Organizer Zane. Feel free to just at me there if you want to talk about your project. If you have no idea what you're doing and need some help. If you want to talk about AI, ML, quantum computing, whatever. If you want any advice or just general information, so there's also the Ask an Organizer channel. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, I'll be providing links to all that stuff after this workshop in the Discord. And yeah, I'm going to give this last little bit. If anyone has questions, they can feel free to ask them. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this presentation. Thank you so much for attending. And yeah, good luck for the next 36 hours. All right, did any of you have questions or? All right, cool. Oh, if you want my impression of it, yeah, if you just want to ask me, like, yeah, we can definitely talk about it. Of course, I won't be like doing your project for you or anything, but if you just want someone's opinion, like, yeah, that's definitely okay to do. Someone's asking, do we need to have a website? No, you can make pretty much anything. Like I said, you can even make a Doom Furby if you want. Really, you can make a website, game, an app, AI, like basically anything as long as you programmed it in some way. And if you have a specific question, like you can hit us up in the Ask Organizers channel. But yeah, you can program pretty much anything. All right, does anyone else have any questions? And if not, I'll just be heading off. But as long as we're here, you can check out the live site to see what's happening next. All right, so actually directly after this workshop, we're going to be having a workshop servers with Node.js. So it's basically going to be showing you the ropes for Node.js. It's really useful for programming apps in general. It's a great framework. So definitely encourage you to check that out. We also then have the Google Dev team here at Virginia Tech giving a workshop on Flutter. So if you are looking to have easy multi-platform mobile development, definitely look into Flutter. And then also a really good computer graphics workshop given by Calvin. I've seen this before last year. It's really great if you can attend. I really encourage you to. He basically programs an entire graphics engine from scratch in Python. It's amazing. So if you can attend it, I'd highly recommend that you do. And yeah, after that, later we will have a how to build a Chrome extension workshop, which I think is really useful for anyone who just hasn't programmed before and wants something, I guess, easier to get into. That's definitely something great. And yeah, then we have a Mario Kart tournament, which will be happening in 1060. So yeah, just look on the live site for that. And yeah, I'll be providing all links after this workshop ends. Yeah, thank you so much for coming.